So now that you understand the general hierarchy of the Amazon algorithm, how they treat keywords and where in the listing they give priority, it's equally important to understand how this plays out over the life of a particular ASIN and product on the Amazon marketplace. So the purpose of this video is really to understand those phases of Amazon SEO and how to manage and adjust your keyword and listing optimization strategy over time, from when you actually launch the product all the way through to the maintenance mode of a product. So the first phase is really all around that launch and honeymoon phase. Again, we'll get into the details of this a little bit more when we get into the launch section, but suffice it to say that first 30 to 60 day period is really critical for your Amazon listing and the success of your Amazon listing, and it's super critical for indexing and organic rank. So really that first 90-day period that you're launching a product is one of the most critical when thinking about SEO and keywords on Amazon. So a couple things to keep in mind during this phase: we're going to manually prioritize those relevant keywords as we set up our listing. We're then going to optimize our listing for really high relevance and high volume, low search frequency rank keywords. And then we're going to pay particular attention to those alpha ASINs that exist in the marketplace. Those are the big dogs. Those are the ones that are finding success. We want to understand and reverse engineer that success from a keyword standpoint and make sure that we're mindful of that as we sculpt and create and target keywords for our own listing. The other really important thing during this launch phase is to closely monitor your pay-per-click conversion rates. We're going to be running pay-per-click campaigns at this time, and on a daily basis, we really need to be paying attention to this. The reason being that pay-per-click conversion rate can have a dramatic impact on how you organically rank. Said another way, if you convert less than average for a particular keyword using pay-per-click, it's going to hurt and be detrimental to your organic ranking. And then if you convert above what your competition is doing for a particular key term, it can actually help you. This is particularly important during a launch phase because you don't have reviews or social proof yet. And so if we're starting to see that pay-per-click conversion is hurting our organic rank, it's better to pause, stop, and then reprioritize words within your pay-per-click campaigns that are actually working. So this is super important and really particular to this launch phase of SEO. You obviously want to closely monitor rank daily at this point. You may only want to make changes every 2, 3, 4, 5 days, but we want to be having a close pulse on the daily movement of organic keyword ranking. This is especially important for those high relevance, high volume terms that we've really prioritized. We want to be keeping a tight pulse on how those are performing. And again, we want to adjust the listing and shut off words that are not converting. We may revisit those at a later stage, but they could be detrimental during this launch phase. So we want to really kind of adjust the listing accordingly for those words that aren't performing. And then as reviews start to come in, say in week 2, week 3, as we start to see those reviews trickle in, we may want to retest different words and performance on conversion, particularly with pay-per-click, as those reviews start to come in. Because a listing with 10, 20 reviews can perform substantially better than even one with 0 reviews. So we want to be keeping a pulse on all those dynamics really during that launch phase, especially the first 30, 60 days, but up into that 90-day mark, I would say kind of fits into this strategy here. The next phase is really all about stabilization and expansion, and this really happens from month 3 to 6. So you should have had reviews starting to come in by now. The honeymoon phase has started to kind of wear off, and we're starting to get into a more stable period that's more reflective of what the long-term keyword performance is going to look like for your listing as it exists. So in this phase, we're really going to determine the keywords that have stuck, like which ones are your high performers that have consistent ranking and conversion rate performance on pay-per-click, and be very mindful of those and double down on those and maybe even prioritize those in title and other elements if they're really highly performing and bringing in a lot of sales. We're also going to want to refresh the market and determine new keywords and entrants. So if new ASINs have entered the space, if new keywords have been discovered, we want to kind of know what those are and keep a tight pulse on those dynamics as they change. We really want to be paying attention to pay-per-click reports. And we'll get into this in the management section later on in the course, but really we want to identify what those high-performing words are that are coming from pay-per-click, especially if those weren't uncovered when we did our initial keyword analysis up front when we created the listing. There's totally a Pareto principle when it comes to keyword performance on Amazon, especially with pay-per-click, where you'll tend to get, most of your sales from about 20% of the keywords. So you want to really identify what those keywords are, and if they aren't in our listing and we haven't focused on them in terms of organic keyword performance, we can really reprioritize those and have a lot of benefit in terms of organic rank and sales for those high-performing words. During this period, we also are likely going to be running A/B title tests. If you've got brand registry within Amazon and you have enough volume, you can qualify for A/B tests. So we may want to test some titles just to see how that impacts conversion rate and ranking. We're obviously going to want to look at creative on an ongoing basis, and particularly for these 6-ish month old ASINs, we may want to look at doing some tests on the listing image and other creative that's within the listing to monitor the click-through rate and the conversion rate performance with those changes made. The key thing when you're running tests is you don't want to be running multiple ones at one time. So if you're doing a title test, just do the title test. If you're doing a creative test, just do the creative test. Don't do multiple things at one time because it can throw things off. Another really critical thing during this 3 to 6 month stretch is to pay attention to review changes, competitive changes, editorial placements, etc. So sometimes you might get picked up as a recommended product for Amazon search algorithm, or you might get picked up for an editorial, or all of a sudden you've got a 4.5 star rating versus a 4-star rating. All of those things you need to keep a tight pulse on and see how those variables impact your keyword performance, conversion performance, and pay-per-click performance. So managing and monitoring all those things is really important during this stabilization and expansion phase. And then the final one is really about maintenance. And I would call this like the 6+ month mark. It's an ongoing exercise, but things have settled by that time. And it's really going to typically be minor changes that take place that you just need to be aware of. So you're going to be doing all of the same things that you would have been doing on that previous step that I just kind of went through and previous phase I just went through. But in addition to that, you're really going to monitor the impact of new SKUs that you add to your portfolio. You're going to look at the benefits of your store page and how the content and various representations of products there are impacting sales and organic ranking. If you start to add child ASINs, so like new colors, new sizes, new offshoots, how does that change your overall keyword performance across that portfolio of products? And then you really want to pay attention here to the impact of new review tiers. And what I'm talking about here is that there's certain levels from a customer standpoint that may dramatically change how they purchase products. An example here is like to get into that 1,000+ review mark is a totally different category than say 800 reviews in a customer's mind. So if you've entered that 1,000+ review mark, just pay attention. You may want to turn other words back on that you didn't have before. You may want to test some new things because you might revive some of those words and get a higher performance conversion and sales standpoint, which could lead to better organic rank when you improve those different review tiers. So really, to put a bow on this, there's multi-phases to this. It's always dynamic and it's always changing. So this is not something where you launch a product, you set up the listing once, you do all this deep dive keyword research, and then your job is done and you move on to other products and other things. This is something that you should be monitoring regularly, daily, weekly, monthly, over time, and really be paying close attention to shifts and changes that you need to make with your keyword strategy and your listing strategy over time. We're going to get into how I do this in the management section, just some best practices and some frameworks you can leverage to monitor your listings over time, but just realize that it's always changing and it's always dynamic.